Now then, I've come out here to Warner. You can see it written there on that thing, and I've come to tell you. I've come to tell you about Finn and my experiences up at Jaguar Land Rover again to correct or repair the faults that I've been having with Finn. But that's a bit of a story that I'll get into later. You saw my last video before I went camping, and you'll probably notice that they didn't actually get anything done much very good, and what they did do, they didn't do very well, but that's another story. But what I've done, I've decided that I'll try and bring you a bit of Albertan culture, I suppose, or history or something. I thought it might be interesting to you, instead of me waffling on about Land Rover all the time. I thought perhaps you could like to see a bit of Alberta as well. So what I've done is I've come out here to Warner, and you'll see here there's these big things behind me. They're called grain elevators. I'll go this way here. That one there that I'm pointing at, that one that says Alberta Pacific Grain, that was the middle bit was built in 1918, and then the outside bits were augmented in 1968, and there's been a couple of different orientations in that process. And this one here is a little newer. That's 1940s, and then these two here you can't see. They're 1960s, but there were more. I used to come down here. When I first come to Canada, I used to drive right by them because I used to go to America, which is down that way on this road. It's on the highway, and I used to drive by these big grain elevators, and they were a sort of a very, and they still are, a very iconic sort of site for southern Alberta and Saskatchewan, and they were designed by a chap called, well, two people, Dart and Dunbar, in New York in the 1842, I think, 1843. And they're a design. Prior to these things, of course, what happened is they used to make, they'd put all grain in a bag, a Hessian sack, I imagine, and they'd throw it on the shoulder and pack it up, and away you go. But what these do, of course, is that you bring your grain in your trailer or wherever you've got, and you'd bring them, and then they'd suck it up, sort of thing. And you'd put it on here, and then a big elevator like them things we used to have back home for conventional bales, them little things, you'd put it on, wouldn't you, and a big rubber band and take it up into a loft. And a bit like that. Sometimes they're auger fed, and sometimes they're a big paddle affair, and some of them are steam powered, and some of them electric powered, and all that kind of stuff. And they put it in a big hopper, basically, and then train comes along. You can see train track here in front, can't you? And train comes along, and then you can see the big arms on side. They put it into train, and that's how you load all that lot up, basically. It's just a way of getting your grain out to your farm more quickly, so that you could speed up farmers getting paid for the stuff they made and collect it all together, and it'd be a more efficient kind of thing. And it was a big shift. 1843 really revolutionised the way they managed grain in North America, bearing in mind that, of course, a lot of North America was also beef farming, and they were in the period of splitting it up and closing it with, getting rid of the rangers and all that like. Anyway, I brought you out here, and I don't know how long I've got because there's a massive black cloud over here, but I brought you out here to show them, because these things, they go in. Canada isn't very good like America of holding on to its history, and these three wooden, what do they call them? They call wood-sided or wood-cased or something, they call them. Grain elevators. I mean, there's new ones, obviously concrete ones, there's lots of them kicking about, but these old wooden ones are fewer and far between. There's not so many of them, and they keep knocking them down. Where this blue one is, there about 7 years ago, there used to be an old one, a very old one, built in 1939, and it was one of the last in Canada to be built in its own design, and there was only 2 of them built like that at 39, and it had a sort of a pyramidal roof. I'll try and find a photograph of it and show you, but that were knocked down, it was pulled down, and there were another 3 in between here. There used to be 7 here, and I just met this old man, Vern his name is here. He's a bit of a local. He grew up next door. We're born in 1943. Me and him have just had a chat. Born in 1943 here, and he moved next door presumably when he were older. So he's like we are back home. He's a local man, and he's travelled a long way. He's come 100 yard or more, I guess. He did tell me he had a job once in Milk River, which is about a 10-mile down road. I guess he had to have his passport stamped when he left here. This tiny little hamlet is exactly what it says it is. There's 100 folk here, and I don't know that it were ever any bigger than what it is now. Anyway, these buildings are iconic because for local people like Vern, they sort of identify and sort of mark what it is that they were all about, farming and grain production, and they sort of, I mean, it's very flat here, as I've probably shown you, and you can see these back in the day. You'd be able to see these from 10 or 15 miles away, and each little hamlet, each little village would have one, and there used to be 7 here, as I said, some very special ones that they pulled down, and they're non-protected because Canada. And so there used to be 7 here, and there's a little village over that way called McGrath. It's got one, Coaldale's got one, Nanton's got a couple that they are preserving and turning into being a museum, but these are operational, they're working. And Vern tells me that this one here's got mustard seeds and peas in it, but traditionally years ago I guess they'd have grain, you know, carry grain, wheats and barleys and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if you can see it, but there's a newer building over there that's a cleaning plant, and they make mustard flour out of mustard seeds, and they pull the oil out to make mustard with, I guess, and then they use the rest to bind meat and burgers and things together. So your McDonald's and A&W's have a binding agent made out of that flour, and all comes from here. So all this sort of stuff is it's part of who they are in southern Alberta, and it's very sad to see these things taken down. There was a big hoo-ha about it in 2014 when they took these 2 down.
Take a good look, son, they ain't gonna last. They're knocking him down left and right. Take a good look, son, next time we drive past. There may not even be one in sight. Another's up for closure, dynamite and dozers. Tradition ain't no match for progress. Scale sheds and gables, scrap wood for sale. That's the way things go these days, I guess. Sooner or later, the old elevators all will be coming down. Sooner or later, the old elevators all will be coming down. What's that in the picture? Your grandkids will ask. Standing in the History Museum, small scale models, some old photographs, likely the only way they'll ever see them. That's the day the congregation came to pay commiserations, talk when the grain reigned supreme. Nostalgia-soaked tears, wait till the dust clears. It's the end of the line, a sign of the times it seems. Sooner or later, the old elevators all will be coming down. Sooner or later, the old elevators all will be coming down. Sooner or later, the old elevators all will be coming down.
They're very special, and it's a shame they weren't preserved, especially when these other ones are still being used. But this one here, this green in here, I should point over that way so you can see. This middle one, the one that's built in 1918, that holds 45,000 imperial bushels. And then the other ones on the side, the far one holds 65,000 imperial bushels, and then this other one here, I don't know how much that carries, but they've moved them around a bit since sort of 1960. They've had one at the back that they don't have anymore, and then they had one at the front which they don't have anymore, and then this Alberta Pacific grain, that one stood on its own over here, and then they moved that in the late 60s, and so they do move them about a bit. But as you can see, these wooden case things, they're lovely. They're made out of cedar, you know, and they're obviously painted, and some of them are painted very elaborately, and some of them are orange and reds, and some are greens and blues, and these are greens, as you can see, and they've got a lot of history, and they're very deeply rooted in the Canadian farming culture and what it is to be an Albertan farmer, I suppose, and a lot of people are very sad that they're getting. I'll show you a photograph of this one in a bit, the one that I'm pointing to that you can't see. Actually, I'm going to send drone, providing it doesn't get struck by lightning from this big thunderhead that we've got here. I'm going to send drone up and I'll get some photographs off, hopefully. And this one here is looking a bit sad, you know, you can see the bow in the wood and the cedar as it's sinking a bit, and it, like as is this one here. It wants another coat of paint and whatever, but there have been a couple that have been restored and repainted, and we've just come back from an holiday in Creston, and they'd actually got whatever they call it, like scaffolding around that, and they look like they were fertling about with it. So I don't know whether that were getting a fresh coat of paint or whatever, but you can imagine they don't look very big, but they actually are quite a size, and I imagine that it would be quite difficult to paint them. You know, it's a bit like the Forth Road Bridge, isn't it? Painting a job here, you'd start on bottom, and then by the time you got top, you got to start all over again, I guess. But damage has been done, and the older ones have gone. You know, the older style, and the ones that are unique or special, sadly they've been lost. Anyway, I'll send drone up in the air and see what we can get, and then I suppose I'll hop in car and we'll talk about Land Rover and all the drama we're having there. I'm back at the car now, and I've got AC on here because the storm's gone a bit nuts. You'll see some photographs, hopefully, anyway. And I'm running the car here just to try and keep cool because it's hot and sweaty, as it were. Now this paperwork here goes with the trip that I took to Jaguar Land Rover on the 28th of, I picked it up on the 28th of June, dropped it off on the 17th, so they had it for 11 days, give or take. And there's a long list of defects that I sent it in with, as I'm sure I've shared with you before. In fact, I'll put them somewhere, scroll them up the side as well. I'll try and do something so you can see the list of defects. And I also sent an email afterwards to the manager of the dealership, Jaguar Land Rover Calgary, as well as Thierry, or Jerry, or whatever you want to pronounce it, Thierry Bolloré, or whatever his name is. And I've been dealing with Kathleen Vicaro, who apparently, according to her email signature, is the executive liaison officer. And I'm assuming that what she does is try and deal with matters like this. In fact, we had a telephone call, Kathleen and I did, just before Taryn and I went away on holiday, and we had a long discussion about the Land Rover and the issues with it, and why why it was problematic, and you know, a bit about my background, saying, you know, that I have got some skill sets in this area, and it's not simply a matter of some guy who was expecting a Range Rover to be disappointed with the performance of the Land Rover, or some such discussion. In fact, Kathleen was very nice when I spoke to her. I have emailed her 2 days ago to let her know that I would, if I hadn't heard back from her, start recording these videos and publicising the issues, based upon the fact that I don't think Jaguar Land Rover is treating these issues seriously enough, and I am a bit disappointed about this quote-unquote fault not verified, which is what they've determined some of the issues that are sent to them to be. And then there is 2 ways to interpret that. The first way is to suggest that they can't find the fault. So the first way is that they can't reproduce the fault, and therefore they can't find it, and they just don't think there is one, basically. And the second way of interpreting it is that they know there's a fault, but they don't know what's caused it. And given that they've sent the vehicle back to me with this fault not verified all over the paperwork, I am going to be I am going to interpret that as one, that they can't reproduce the fault, and that is a bit problematic, because it doesn't say the fault doesn't exist, it just says that they can't find it, and they haven't tried very hard to replicate the faults, because the first thing I did when I picked up the vehicle was try and replicate the throttle position sensor idling issue that I have previously hinted to, and I found that it produced the same fault almost immediately. Right, so what we've got here is a list. I've got it on here as well, and I've got some snapshots on here, and I shall keep reaching through, because it's actually a little easier, I suppose, to look through these. And what I'll do is, as we go through them, I'll go through them very quickly, because this is the second time I've done this. I will piece in to the video examples of the fault happening and some photographs of their so-called fixes, and we can see where we go. Now, the first thing that I should mention on this piece of paper is that last time I dropped it off, they replaced the rear tailgate door seal, and for some reason or other it appears on here as well. So I don't know whether they replaced it twice, but anyway, they've said they fitted one. So it might have had 2 on it, which I didn't ask for, but anyway. Right, so the mapping system requires updates, it says here, and that's presumably because of the issues with the DSC, the TCM, and the throttle position sensor, the throttle behaviour, and other such things. So it says here that what they've done is they've replaced the ECU now for the MHEV power inverter converter control module. They've just replaced it. I don't know why they thought that was the fault, but anyway, that's what they've done. They've also replaced the battery energy control module, and they've updated the ECU for the gateway control module. They've updated and replaced the transmission control module, and they've updated and replaced the transfer case control module, which seems very excessive, because I don't believe the fault was in any of those things. That I have mentioned there's a transmission shift error, and perhaps that's what they're talking about, but they were, obviously they've replaced a bunch of things trying to fix that. Now, this is being done in conjunction with the TA department, the TA team. I don't know what that stands for, but it seems to be some sort of technical assistance department, and I'm not sure whether it's in America or whether it's in Britain. But the transmission shifting, I've spoken with a number of people. These are not my own thoughts alone, but there are other people that are experiencing these difficulties, and it seems that we've concluded that the issue is that on these 8-speed transmissions in the Defenders, and it doesn't seem to affect them all, and I can't account for that, but what happens is that the transmission, when you're going at a low speed and decelerating, the transmission drops into first gear when it's still travelling too fast to be in first gear, and that fires the RPM up to 2200 or 2500, and of course the result is that you lurch forwards because the vehicle's basically in engine braking mode. There's a chap called Adam Worthington on the Facebook groups who's also experienced this, and there are another couple of people. My fix for this would be to program the gearbox to engage first gear only when the vehicle was stopped, or very, very nearly stopped, rather than like only 5 or 4 miles an hour, in like half a mile an hour. So whether they've tried to change the transfer control module, transmission control module, in order to resolve that fault, I don't know. I can't say. Doesn't seem to be sensible to me here. The next fault is that check a possible throttle control and throttle position sensors, read and clear faults codes, update the powertrain control module, secondary diagnostics, not sure what that means, customer to monitor, as there's no difference after the software update. Well, we know that happened the first time that they tried to update the software, and it's no different now, as I will show you as I cut to it now. Now, somebody suggested that to try and do this with a brick or something. Now, I have explained that it's not that easy, because putting the fast idle on, the throttle pedal's extremely sensitive, and so if you just squidge it up a little bit, nothing happens. There you go. Now we'll put it there and we'll see what happens. Oh look, it's revving its nuts off. And there it goes. Off she goes, rev to infinity. There you are, the jack. Now, Jaguar Land Rover said they couldn't get this to happen. I wonder why. Is it because they didn't try very hard? I think it probably is. Now, this is the P400 in the Velar. And I'll just drop this throttle pedal here to show you the story. But do you remember we had some issues with the throttle pedal response in the P400 and the Defender, whereby you can't hold 1500 RPM? So I'm just going to pick it up now to 1500 RPM. And I'm going to leave my foot steady. And there it is, held. Well, just under 1500. I could squeeze it a bit harder. There we go. And there it is, steady RPM without moving my foot, which you can't see, which is down here, and it maintains a steady RPM, which doesn't happen in the Defender. P400 in a Velar. So now you'll see that there's two different performances, one from the Velar and one from the the Defender. You can see that one is not like the other. The Velar is a much more positive and much more progressive throttle response. It's much more controlled. It's much more controlled off-road. It's much more controlled on-road. And I believe that the difference that you see there in the throttle function and behavior is partly responsible for the issues we're seeing here. Now, I understand it's got a different differential, it's a different drivetrain, the transmission's the same, but obviously there's no low transmission, there's no low box, and so I understand it's a completely different car. But the point I'm trying to say is, if it is possible to make the Velar perform progressively and controlled and has a very positive throttle performance, then it should so too be the case that you can make the Defender that way, because it's the same engine. And if you can map something that it works well in the Velar, then you can map the Defender so that it works well, but you're not. It says here they're awaited reply. They checked the PVCV and there's no abnormalities or damage noticed. They spent 3.5 hours on it. What they didn't do, you will notice from any of this, is actually get in the car and do the test that I've done. So they've done all these other things, plugged it in, but they haven't actually got in the car and revved the car up to see if you can maintain 1500 RPM. And that is one of my continuing issues, is that when I report a fault and say, look, it does this when I do this, I don't expect somebody to plug it into a computer and say, no, it doesn't. I expect you to jump in the driver's seat, press the pedal and say, oh yeah, it does do that when you do that. That's right. Anyway, On here, there's the rear camera washing operative that I reported from the last time. They have removed all the things and refitted it again. They've also removed the bumper valance because they've put in some tow hoops that they should have fitted on the black one that they didn't fit, and then they should have fitted on this one, which they didn't fit, and now this is the 5th time it's been in to have them fitted, and now they've been fitted. However, they have chipped the paint when installing them, so when they've put the bumper back on, they've been a bit rough with it, and they've damaged the paint, because my bumpers are painted black and they've damaged the paint where the hoops go. I'll show you a photograph of that now. Now it says here they've renewed the washer jet, which it didn't need because there was just a hole in the pipe where they'd trapped it in the body. So when they built it, they've squeezed the hose pipe in between a piece of trim in the back and some piece of metal or other. And so what they've done now is, instead of fixing that part, they've actually renewed the washer jet. Very confused about this, but anyway. They have, it says here, verified and inspected and discovered that the locking tabs and clips are missing from the cover on the ladder. Now this was a bit of a battle. They wouldn't originally warranty this because they said they couldn't return the clip because the clip was missing. They've had a big hoo-ha about it, and they're very insistent on telling me that they've pulled a lot of strings to replace my ladder. Well, I didn't want the ladder, I just wanted the clips. I just wanted the cover replaced. The fact that Land Rover don't make a replacement cover is their own fault. Now, they have installed the block heater. There was a bit of drama about that because, as you've noticed, perhaps from my forum posts, that the issue was that the tech decided that he wanted to put that plug right in the centre of the grill, and the problem with that is that's exactly where the winch would fit, assuming that I'm going to fit a winch. So I've told them that that's not acceptable, and they spent another half a day apparently trying to figure out where else to put it, and they put it underneath the headlight. Now I've spoken to another dealership, and the other dealership says that the instructions for the fitting of the block heater insist that this plug actually goes directly under the driver's side in Canada, the driver's side headlight, which is where they've put it. But seeing as that's where the instructions tell them to put it, I am very confused at why they told me they were going to put it in the middle of the bumper, right where the winch fits. But that's another story. Anyway, they have installed that, so thank you very much. I should mention to you that this block heater was allegedly fitted to the vehicle when I bought the car. It was part of those things that dealer fits that you got no choice in, and they installed this. Apparently they installed this block heater, but when I looked for it at winter time, it was quite evident that there wasn't one, and there wasn't one on the black one either. And so I wrote off to them and said, why have I been charged $1,000 for some block heater that you haven't fitted? And they said, oh well, I'm terribly sorry, but it hadn't arrived. I said, well, do you not think it might have been advisable to tell me that prior to charging me $1,000 for its installation, and then just happening not to tell me that you've not installed this $1,000 worth of kit? And they said, yes, that was probably a bit of an oversight. We should have done that. I know at least 9 vehicles that came out of JLR Calgary that have had block heaters charged for that haven't been installed, and nobody has been told that they've not been installed. So I don't know that it was an oversight, more of a kind of potential mechanism to steal $1,000 off people who may or may not notice their vehicles were so fitted, or so not fitted, as the point may be. The air intake cap here says needs removing and straightening. That's not what it says. It says straighten it. And they have removed it, but they have not straightened it. It is now, it was relatively straight, at least on one axis, and now it is not straight on 2 axes. So they've successfully taken something off, taken 20 minutes to do it, and put it back worse than what it was the first time around. I'll show you a photograph of that now. According to Land Rover, that's level. They fixed it twice now. I don't know what kind of angle you want called level, but that's not here, is it? What does you reckon of that, folks? Top quality installation. Wiper not seating properly. Now originally when I brought this in, there was no issue, and now they've found there was a problem with the wiper blade and they've renewed it. So my point remains that given that I have already presented this fault and there was quote unquote no fault verified the first time round, I fail to see why they've now found and discovered a fault and changed the wiper blade. Either they didn't bother the first time, or they didn't look hard enough, one or the other. But anyway, they've done it now. They have changed again the jets of the windscreen wiper, because, as I mentioned to you, that wasn't they'd fixed it and made it worse. They have checked the wider inoperative, the wireless charger, and found it to be inoperative. I have sent several videos showing how the operation on my phone is up and down. And by that I mean it's inconsistent. Sometimes it charges and sometimes it doesn't. I've got several videos of that showing how it charges and doesn't charge. I will share that now. What I will say is that Taryn's iPhone 10 is more consistent and charges every time, and my iPhone does not. So it may be a case that there is an issue with my phone. However, what I would like to say in my defense is that my iPhone, which is up here, charges consistently every single time I put it on one of 3 wireless chargers in my house. I've got one in my bedroom, one in the office, and one in the shop, and I could just have to put it on and it charges without fail every single time. What I'm trying to say by that is, if the other 3 chargers, wireless chargers that I have, work every time consistently, and it doesn't work every time consistently in here, that tells me that there's a design issue with this, not my phone. The main beam assist won't stay toggled on. They fixed that with an update to the headlamp control module. I've topped up the coolant. I've actually put in 4 gallons of coolant into this vehicle since I've had it, and apparently they haven't verified any such fault. But what they have done this time is replaced the coolant, well, it says here radiator tank, so I'm assuming that's the expansion tank. So they replaced that and they put in a bunch of coolant, and they've replaced the cooling system as a partial drain and vacuum fill of the sensor. Now they have pressure checked it, and I haven't had the coolant notice since, so this may have actually resolved the problem. Where the coolant was missing from, I don't know, because although a pressure test demonstrates whether there's a leak under pressure, what it doesn't do is explain where the coolant went. And the mechanism to have a look for that is to physically look at the engine to see tracing that you get from coolant leakage. So they didn't do the actual hard work. What they've done is they've just done a simple basic pressure test, which may or may not reveal a fault, because not all pressure tests are categorical in identifying a leak. What they didn't do is actually look for a physical trace. So I haven't had to put any coolant in it yet, but I've only had it for 1,000 kilometers or so, 2,000 miles, sorry. There was an issue with 4G reception at Pivi Pro. 4G reception is now fixed. It has come back. I don't know what they've done. They said that they couldn't find any issue. There doesn't appear to be any damage to the shark fin. We know that. Told them that already. It might have been a Pivi Pro glitch, but it was a Pivi Pro glitch that lasted for 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So maybe, and it hasn't done it since, so that's all right. They have done a replacement of the front infotainment control module ECU. So I don't know why they've replaced that. I don't understand what purpose they've done it. I don't understand why you would do that. And they have the Pivi variant configuration routine, whatever that is. And they've done one of those too. They have said that the function is not verified, and that may be the case. They've updated the latest software, which they actually didn't, because the night I drove it out of the dealership and parked it in my house, I got a warning saying new software has been downloaded and will be installed. So they didn't push the new software, and that new software was the one that made the engine quiet that people have been talking about. So they haven't pushed that. Anyway, it is now running that because it updated the night I got it home. They didn't provide me with a welcome pack that was promised, and I have picked that up now. I have reported that they gave me 2 ratchet straps, both of which had bent. You know, the cams inside the little lock lever. Both of them are bent, and I've reported that, and I'm going to show you a photograph now. Cam strap I brought to them because it's buckled. Can you see? It's not square. and the catch pawls, the pins on the side, are rounded because the pawl's damaged. It's been bent here. Can you see where this bar lever runs into these cams? And you'll see that it is bent, and they said here the ratchet straps are perfect. There's nothing tested and there's nothing wrong with them, it says here, which may be the case, but they didn't actually look at them and they are bent. So I don't know why they're giving me some like bent straps that are, you know, that's just not good, is it? I asked them to check the springs to see if they're in the date range for an SSM. They did, and they're not. It says here they're losing coolant. They've related to a previous line, which they've done line O. Low performance and turbo and lagging. That isn't applicable to this vehicle, and that's nice to know. But I'd reported it because I'm trying to show any potential connection between this lack of progressive driving and the excessive sort of throttle use and reviness and lack of progression in its performance off-road and on-road. And I wondered whether low or excessive performance or lagging of the turbo might be related. You know, if you put your foot on your throttle and then all of a sudden the turbo decides to kick in midway through, then you've not got that progressive sort of linear control. And that was just one thing I was trying to throw at them to say maybe related to this performance, but they don't seem interested in doing that. They have I can't get heat from the lower vents, or I'm unable to stop it completely. This is a fairly major issue because what happens is that no matter what setting you have on here for the climate, you always get air blowing cold or hot at your feet, and always blowing cold or hot at the screen, depending on what temperature you've got. What that means is that the dampers inside are not completely isolating the feet or the screen. This is a problem that has been reported. I've recorded a video which I'm going to show you now in the VLAR. I'm just going to adjust the climate here, and you can see the climate is now blowing in the windscreen as it is, and none on the feet. And so I'm just going to switch it off from the, and now you can see that it has stopped moving because there is no air coming through the top vent. I've switched it off here, no air coming through the top vent. I'm going to switch it back on, and now you can see it's blowing. And the same happens when you put it on your feet. Now they have done it. It is doable in the VLAR. It isn't doable in this. Here, and I'm going to put the fan on, and there's no screen on here. And now I'm just going to do the same test as we did in the other one. And you can see there's air coming through the top vent. There it is. So bad that it's blowing the paper like right back. Well, if I put this now on like screen and face, and then I put a feather underneath the dash, you can see it blowing because it's blowing at a fair rate of knots. I'm not the only person to complain about this. There has been at least 2 or 3 people on Facebook and a couple of people on my YouTube account. So not just me, they've even got SSM for it. According to them, they can't find the fault. They have updated the HVAC system and with the codes, but it said they've compared it to a good known Defender, and both have HVAC air distribution were identical. Very well may be the case, but it's still not right. Whether you've got 2 vehicles doing it doesn't explain the fact that if I want to isolate temperature from my, you know, blowing from my feet or from the screen, it should be doable. It's doable in the VLAR. Why is it not doable in this? It seems to be a fairly fundamental function within a heater to be able to set the baffles to direct the air. Anyway, they haven't done anything that. Customer reported the seats are roushing, excessive wear, and are dirty. They've detailed to perform the TSB. I will now show you a photograph of their so-called clean. which is neither clean. You can see a big dark patch in the big light patch in the middle of the seat, and the outside edges of the seat haven't been cleaned either, so they haven't done that. Install the tow hoops, yes, they've done that, but they've damaged the paintwork. The DSC fault video provided, concern not verified. That means that they either can't find it, haven't tried hard enough, haven't got, I mean, they're not taking it off road, which I can understand, but the fault still exists. And you know, I mean, other than showing them a video, I don't know what they want me to do. I am more than happy, JLR, if you get your bums in gear, to come out with me, and I will take you somewhere and I will show you when this DSC issue happens. It happens to me, it's happened in England, and it's happened several times in Australia. We are not making this up. Just because you can't verify the fault does not mean the fault doesn't exist. It's there, you're not trying hard enough. Customer to report, wheel arch protection cover loose. It was. They've replaced it. They ordered one out of America. America sent the wrong part. I don't make this up. I had to wait another couple of days for the right part. That still didn't happen, so they stole one off another car. What actually happened, I am told, is that the sticky tape wasn't at fault. I thought the sticky tape had fallen off, but what has happened is that there's some clips underneath, or some location lugs or something like that, and those had snapped off. And so it needed a new part, which is what they've done. Concern verified, rear passenger door exterior molding is broken, and that's the piece that they've replaced. Engine hunting under moderate load on hill. It said they've done nothing here apparently to that whatsoever. They've not even put any time into it, so there's no time. They haven't taken it out for a road test. It is still hunting. I've got a video of that which I'll show you now. And here again, it's surging now. I don't know that you can see it in the rev counter, but there you go. Did you see that jump? And now it's cutting back, so it's surging all the way. It's almost like it's, I don't know what to tell you, it's more like it's sort of missing, really, I suppose. And I've sent that video to Kathleen because it was the first time I took a video of it. It is, I would describe that issue as a missing. So when we climbed a particular hill, and there's many of them, at a moderate load and at a moderate RPM of 2200, 2500 RPM, the engine misses. It's almost like it's no fault code comes up and it doesn't detect a miss, but there's a lurch every now and then, as if it's just missing, you know, as if it's not firing properly, and that happens regularly and often. Fuel economy is low. They have updated a bunch of things. And the fuel economy does seem to have gone up by about 0.5 miles to the gallon, but their information here says that they can't compare Defenders with different driving habits and different locations. Now, that statement is fair, apart from the fact that I have 2.2 million miles of driving experience in 88 countries, driving semi-trucks and you know, Arctics and that kind of stuff, as well as personal transport on top of the 2.2 million miles. I know how to drive, and I know how to drive economically, and I know how to drive well, and I know where I'm driving, and I'm driving in the same place that other people are driving, and why they may have different driving habits than me. If you're trying to tell me that my experience in driving is the cause of my not getting the same amount of fuel economy as somebody else, I'm not having it. Not only is it rude and disrespectful to the amount of experience I've got, it's also not, it doesn't relate to the facts that my L322 performed better when towing than this vehicle and without towing. And I was driving it then in the same conditions on the same roads with the same trailer. Now, it is the case that you can't compare an L322 to an L663 for fuel economy. I understand that, two different vehicles, two different weights, two different rolling resistance, but one's 100 brake horsepower more and 10 years older. And if you're producing a vehicle that produces less brake horsepower, less power, less torque, and is 10 years younger, and it's still 5 miles to the gallon less good than something 10 years old, you've got a bigger problem. And it's not like it's either there's something wrong with this car or your design's rubbish. And I can't help you with which one those is, but that's the truth, because like this should be able to outperform with new engine, new technology, and all the rest of it should be able to, new gearbox, should be able to easily outperform an L322 that was heavier than this. So, like, I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want me to draw you a picture? So please don't patronising me and telling me that the Defender driving habits of 2 different driving habits and 2 different locations, because I'm not having it. Having said that, it has gone up a little bit in fuel economy. I was just looking recently on here, and it did say that the best one is 24 miles to the gallon. But I mean, it does also do 18 and 19 miles to the gallon, and these are, you know, there's one here I drove for 122 miles on the 3rd of the 7th, and it produced 12.1 miles to the gallon, and my score is 4.9 and 5 on the, you know, the driving habits thing. So I mean, I don't know what you want me to do here, because if that was at 1.3 and the driving habits were 1.3 all the way across, I could understand it. But like, why is it doing 12 miles to the gallon? You're out to lunch, Land Rover. You're not even close to being reasonable. So anyway, they've done nothing about that. Transmission fault. This locked up in the middle of nowhere many months ago. I've shared a video, and I'll share another video where it's sort of stranded on a bank, and the whole thing just, I'll cut to it now. I've no gearbox. Nothing. And as you can see, the whole thing just cut at the top of the hill, died there, and then locked the transmission up. If I didn't have my, if I hadn't got my my gap tool, which is not something I recommend at the moment because there isn't full coverage from gap diagnostics on the Defender, but if I hadn't got that with me, I'd have been sat there still, because there was no phone signal, and it was a long way to phone signal. And you can't have that. That's one of the complaints that people are worried about. What about if all these electronics give up on you in the middle of the desert, or in the middle of, well, I was 100 miles away from cell phone signal and it did give up on me, and if I hadn't have got that gap tool, I'd have been sat there still. Fault detected. Check the TCF. Concern not verified, despite me sending them a photograph, a video of the actual event happening. There was a code logged in the TCM. They checked the TCM adaptation, so they said the concern is not verified, but they have found a code. So I don't understand what that means. Here they are, P164C-62. So it did code, but they've also marked it as concern not verified. So what does that mean? That means they found the code, they know there's a fault, but like it's not a fault now. Not a fault now, or like what does that mean? Check the TCM adaptation and all are in range. TCM is already in the latest software, which it would be because that was done last time. But what I'm telling you now is that they found a code, but they've said that there's nothing wrong with it, despite the fact that it gave up on the side of an hill somewhere. Well, that's not right, is it? High beam brightness on the Defender is good. It's not good. The main beam performance is absolutely dismal. I only noticed that because, well, I noticed that it was terrible compared to my L322, which is 10 years old. And I reported it, and they said that's just how they are, and I was disappointed to find out we don't get the matrix lights here, which may or may not have something to do with it, so that was a bit of a worry. But since then, I have found many people that are also complaining about the dismal performance of the main beam lamps, main beam lights, and it's a nightmare. You can't see, it's so dark out here in the middle of nowhere, you can't see a thing, and it's dangerous. They've inspected it, and it's the same as some other vehicle, and it's not fair. It's not proper to compare the VLAR, as they've different headlamps. I understand that, what I'm trying to say to you, Land Rover, is if you're producing a vehicle that meets a minimum light distribution in a VLAR or in a L405 or whatever you're comparing it to, then it's not the case that it's appropriate to produce a vehicle with poor headlights that clearly don't meet that benchmark, because you can't have, there are constraints about how bright you can have the lights, and so there are constraints about how good lights are. Assuming that the VLAR meets and does not exceed those benchmarks, what you're now telling me is that this vehicle does not meet those benchmarks, which tells me that the lights are underperforming. So either way you draw that, you've nailed your own coffin here, because by telling me that these lights aren't as good as VLAR lights, you're now telling me that it's possible to make lights that are as good as the VLAR, you just haven't bothered to fit them. So you need to sort that out too, because it's not cool. Engine noise to start up is normal, we know that. What I was complaining about was a loudness that is associated with a kind of a sucking noise. It sounded to me a lot like, and Taryn, it sounded to us a lot like when a powered steering pump doesn't have a lot of fluid in it. You know, when you've got air in your powered steering pump, that kind of rushing. Right, so you can hear that the loud start hasn't been fixed. Peculiarly, as soon as they install this new software from Pivi, that's ceased, and there have been a number of comments all across the forums and the Facebook groups demonstrating that that has been noticed by other people. So I wasn't making it up. It may have compared with another Defender that also had that same software level, but still they've fixed it now with this new software. So something had changed, it had got worse, it had got louder, and now they've fixed it, but apparently I'm lying when I mention it to them. And that's it basically. The rear outdoor moulding was ordered, and they've checked the backup camera. What they haven't done, of course, as I mentioned in all of that, is fix the throttle position sensor. They haven't fixed the DSC issues, they haven't fixed the lack of progressive driving, they haven't fixed the fuel economy, and these things are fundamental issues which are bothering us, because 7 or 8 years ago Audi had a full recall on misperforming throttle position sensors, and I am bothered. I mean, this isn't right, and I am bothered that what is going to happen is that it's going to freak out at some stage and stick on full or something, and then run into a bridge, or I don't know what's going to happen. Toyota also had a recall for dodgy throttle position sensors. There have been a number of people that have done the test that I have done on YouTube, and almost categorically it's come back without the same performance. What I'm trying to say there is my throttle seems to perform very differently to many other people who've tried their P400s, and it performs very differently to how the VLAR performed when I had the VLAR. If the VLAR works well and this one doesn't work well, why aren't you fixing this? Because it's not right, is it? It's not as good as it could be. And if this is your flagship model, why aren't you making it as good as you could be? So what I've told this Kathleen Vicaro now is that I don't want the car. Taryn doesn't want the car. It's not reliable. Oh, I should tell you that when we went on holiday, we had more drama. We had a check engine light come on because the O2, so the post-cat O2 sensor failed. For some unknown reason, the battery died in the middle of the night. And when we came out, we couldn't get into the car because the battery was dead. The same time, my window switches packed up. I'll show you a video of that. So this is new. Look, you press the button and nothing happens. Look at that. I go down and up, and then down and up, and that doesn't work either. Look at that. And then that doesn't work. So none of these work at all. But the peculiar thing is, if we go over here and press Taryn's button, now we have a window. Like that. So I don't know what to make of any of that. What do you think of that? More interesting, exciting thing. Still got a check engine light here. Look. Then on the way home, when it got dark, the chromatic door mirrors stopped working as well. So having reported all this and having sent it into Land Rover for a bunch of upgrades and all the rest of it, and reporting a bunch of faults that they can't seem to find at all with both hands and some videos to show them how, It then proceeded to break down in 4 ways in a trip that lasted 2,000 miles. So, I just don't understand, Land Rover, what it is you need me to demonstrate to show you that there's something wrong with this car. How much do I have to tell you that this is a broken car before you actually take it away and fix it and put me in something that's not broken? Because I've had enough of this car. I've had enough of this car. I've had enough of your attempts to avoid the discussion. I've been talking to Kathleen Vaccaro, your executive liaison officer, who understands the difficulty that I've been having and has seen for herself in first hand with the videos that I provided the faults in occurrence. I do not know what else you need me to do. And all of this discussion is happening at the same time as you've made a big press release to Motor One magazine and Car and Driver or whatever else it is, saying that you're going to clamp down on reliability issues, and at the very same time I'm reporting nearly 50 faults with a brand new car, and you're not even caring to like deal with the matter responsibly. It's just not acceptable. And with that, I'm going to say I'll see you to the next video, but it's 100 miles home. Yes, I might not get there. I keep thinking that every day I'm going to drive this car, it's going to pack up at the side of the road. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know what your thoughts and comments are. Sorry that it's turned into being a rant, but I'm running out of patience with Land Rover and the difficulties that we're experiencing here. And I look forward to seeing you again. And with that is good night from me, or good day from me, and good day from Finn.